Hello and welcome to episode 110 of the Wisdom from the Akasha podcast. My name is Suzie, I'm your host, and I'm an Akashic Records teacher and practitioner. Today we have another episode of the Meet the Grads series, and I asked a former podcast guest of mine, Carlie Wyton, to come back and just talk about where she's at now in her journey. Carlie came and did an episode with me. I believe it's episode 47. I will put a link into the show notes so you can go and listen to that one back in 2024, when she was just starting out on her journey, blending psychotherapy, traditional psychology, and her Akashic Records work. And I invited her back, one, because I just love having a conversation with her about her work, but also so that you can see how you can use the Akashic Records in conjunction with your own offerings, and also how the work is going to gradually evolve and change over time. This is very, very normal. And what you'll see from Carlie's conversation is that she is now doing this deep work with clients using the Akashic Records, using traditional methodologies, using traditional psychotherapy, but really supporting them in that deep way. Without further ado, here is the conversation between myself and Carlie. I will put all of Carlie's details in the show notes so that you can get in touch with her should you want to work with her, to join any of her programs that she has, and just to give her a follow on her socials. I will see you all next week for the next episode. Welcome back to the Wisdom from the Akasha podcast, Carlie. It is so lovely to have you here again. I can't wait to hear everything that's going on in your life, what you're up to now. For those of you who don't know Carlie, I will pop a link into the show notes for a previous episode that Carlie and I did. I think it was back in 2024 now, which seems like a very long time ago.
Like a lifetime.
Literally. But Carlie has agreed to come back and have a chat with me about what she's up to and everything that's going on in the world at this time. So welcome back, Carlie.
Thank you. It's so great to be back. I feel so privileged to get to come back and talk again. And it really does feel like a lifetime since we chatted last. So much has happened.
Tell us all about what has been happening for you in your business, in your Akashic Records practice. Tell us all of that.
Sure. So besides everything happening in the world, which is a lot, when we did our interview last time, I had finished all of the sessions. I was level 1, 2, 3. I had started offering Akashic Records readings for clients. So just a reminder to the new listeners, I'm a psychotherapist. So I work in psychotherapy. I work with people's psychology. And where I often found myself was in a more psycho-spiritual therapeutic role. And one thing that I was realizing was that there was this place that psychology just couldn't quite go with a lot of people. And what I realized was there's other layers that I don't somehow seem to have access to, or people don't have access to, but there's something else there. And so that's what led me to learning about the Akashic Records and then training with you. And then in doing the readings I was doing for people, realizing, oh, there it is. There it is. It lives in a past life, or it lives in your soul blueprint, or it lives in your, and it would just bring so much more understanding. And I do a lot of shadow work with people and Jungian style work. And it's just in this deep, 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 deep layer that it's hard to find. So I started using the Akashic Records, not in my sessions, but I started offering them as a side thing. So people could come for a psychology session, they could come for an Akashic reading. And a lot of people found me from your episode. So I had started offering it to some clients, and people were hearing about it and coming to me just bit by bit. And then I did the podcast with you. A lot of people found me. They wanted readings. I offered a reading and then a psychological integration package. I still offer that. So people will come for a reading, and then they'll get one more session where we do a kind of psychological approach to integrating that reading. And often what that would end up doing is creating a plan or a goal for somebody that then they would want to work through psychologically. And a lot of people have stayed on as clients, which has been so great. And I started realizing that, hey, it might actually be cool to be able to open the records while in session. Let's look at doing blended sessions. And I just started experimenting with blended sessions with people. And so for the last year, it's just been this progression of some people I just do readings with. Some people I do both. Some people we do a reading, we do a few sessions. They realize they want a clearing. We do the clearing. And it's just been this beautiful progression.
Yeah. I love that. I love
Yeah.
that because I think sometimes we can tend to kind of put modalities or things into boxes when really we do want to start zooming out and seeing things more holistically. So I love that blending of traditional psychotherapy, which I think is very, very valuable for people, and not saying, oh, the Akashic Records is better than that, but saying, okay, how can the Akashic Records complement that? And how can the psychotherapy complement the Akashic Records? Because what I found in my journey as an Akashic Records practitioner is I'm doing a lot more mentorship work in that sense as well, in this respect of clients come along, we go into mentorship, they'll have a reading and then stuff will come through in the reading and then I'm going to support them through what's come through. Then it's time for a clearing. And I think it's beautiful to see how the records can be used in that expansive way. I'm not in any way, shape or form discounting how valuable it is to have an Akashic Records reading. I've had clients who've come to me, had one reading and it's literally changed their life and they've had amazing information and guidance that they've been able to implement. But I think there's just something so kind of special for us as practitioners of being able to be on a journey with someone and seeing them grow and evolve and expand and implementing the advice that they get and then getting that next piece of advice, implementing that and seeing them really start to trust themselves and start to fall in love with themselves. Because I think so many people come to certainly my work, and I'm sure yours, with this belief that, they're broken, that there's something wrong with them, and that they're not worthy of everything that they can have in this life. And I think seeing them go from that to not only self-acceptance, but true self-love and really owning that authenticity and stepping into their power. I think it's just such a gift as a practitioner to be able to walk that pathway.
Absolutely. That's a term I think that comes out of my mouth 100 times a day is true self. Let's find our way back to true self. And certainly as a psychotherapist, I lean heavily on Carl Jung's work. I lean heavily on parts integration and mindful self-compassion. So it's a lot of finding love for yourself and the parts of you that have split off along the way or developed during hard moments and then got stuck there, and just helping people to rescue themselves to come back to the whole. And we find true self in falling back in love, just like you said, or rescuing the part of us that we didn't even know was still stuck somewhere. The question is always, why do I always do this? Or why can't I stop that? And I know in my head, but I can't make it stop. And so I love doing these journeys with people. And I do them in like a half conscious journey with people a lot of the time, where I walk them back into their psyche and it's very meditative. And we go and find the place or the time where that thing got stuck. And I was finding that people were actually finding that, oh, that actually doesn't belong to me. I can see in my mind's eye where my grandmother handed that to me. Oh, okay. So that's ancestral. Or that doesn't belong to me. I can feel in my body that was placed there somehow. And so I really loved that I do that work psychologically with people, but it is this very spiritual process. And a lot of the time, I think, okay, so in this process, we can bring in connection to higher self. We can bring in this connection to your team. You have a team. I say that to people. Do you know that your soul had a plan? And do you know that your soul isn't on its own doing this whole thing? You're a spiritual being having a human experience, and you're actually not alone. And there actually is plans, and there actually is purpose. And isn't it so cool to be able to have other resources like the Akashic Records to explore? I've actually just written this program to help people on this awakening process. I started a new business just now. I had my psychotherapy business. It was very, I don't want to say muggle based psychotherapy business, but it was just more traditional psychotherapy. And there's always this trend towards the spiritual happening, anyways. And I've worked with so many people now just going through this awakening process. And I started a podcast with a friend of mine to talk about awakening and the process of awakening and the things that we find about ourselves in this and the things that we see the world differently in this. And from that, I decided to start a new business altogether. And I'm offering therapy, psycho-spiritual therapy, Akashic Records, all what I'm doing, but I want to offer programs that actually keep people on a direct path towards what is this soul? I call it the soul emergence program.
Ooh, I love that.
How is your soul wanting to emerge, ready to emerge onto this soul journey that you're here to have on purpose? Let's undo those things that are holding you down. Let's offer the clearings where we can clear and what your guides can do with you in this process. It's much more structured than a typical psychotherapy or even Akashic Records reading might be. It's a structured program. It lasts 12 weeks and you come up with your idea, you make your plan. Then we go to the records, we check that all out. And then we start doing the psychological and spiritual process of removing those old layers on purpose, intentionally, with so much compassion and love for the true self, and ritualizing those losses too, right? Ritualizing the grief of letting go of who you've been, who you were told to be, all of these things, and really stepping into and allowing your soul to emerge, that soul emergence. And I just don't see a way to do it without blending the two. So it is an Akashic reading and then a psychology session, an Akashic clearing and then a psychology session, and then different modalities that weave this beautiful tapestry together with you. And then rituals that are a little more spiritually inclined. And at the end, you have this finished product of the true self, although we're never finished, are we? But you'll have arrived. You'll have arrived at the place where then you're ready for what's next. And
I love that.
yeah, it's just been this beautiful creation time for me in really walking through so many things with so many clients and thinking, I could put this together for people. So that's my new thing. And I just love that I have access to these two modalities. And I'm always so grateful to you for all that you taught me, because really, I lean on so much of what you taught me and what you still teach me on your podcast and in your information you send out.
Oh, thank you. That's so kind. And I want to touch on a couple of things. And I think, first of all, I want to touch on, for everyone who is a spiritual or intuitive business owner who listens to the podcast, when I'm talking about your business evolving and growing and expanding and changing, this is what I'm talking about. And it is hard to kind of allow new things to be born through and your offerings to change. But actually, it's so beneficial when you do, because you are always going to change and expand and grow. So I just want you to take this as permission that if you're feeling something new inside of you, ready to be born, a new program, a new offering, a new service, a new product for your client, this is what it looks like. Okay. It's taking everything, putting it into a package and then putting it forward. And I will, of course, put all of your details. So if anyone's listening to this episode and they think that's exactly what I need, they will be able to find you and reach out to you directly. But I also wanted to touch on something that you said that I think is really important and often gets missed in this process. And it's something that I do a lot with clients one-on-one as well. That's actually honoring that grieving process, because we have to let go of parts of ourselves, and those parts of ourselves aren't bad. We've created certain parts of ourselves to help us navigate through difficult times, traumatic experiences, and all of that. And I think sometimes there's a disregard for actually making the space and going through the grieving process of letting that part go that people want to avoid because it's uncomfortable, or that they don't know that it's normal to go through that. They don't know that when you think there's this misconception that truly living in soul alignment, which is what the Akashic Records is all about, it's just going to happen and it's just going to be amazing. And you're going to go from feeling like you're a little bit mechanical and you're just acting through your programming and conditioning to fully aligned true self. And actually, there is a process that takes place. And part of that process is expansive and amazing. And you get to feel so good during. And part of it is also really difficult. And you're going to be saying goodbye to parts of yourself, those parts of you that you've created to protect you, to keep you safe, to help you navigate through a certain phase. And if you don't honor that grieving process, if you don't take time and space and be in the energy of that and work with that energy, you don't expand. And I think sometimes people can get stuck there. They know that new is ready. They know they're feeling more aligned to themselves, but they don't know quite how to navigate through the grieving process. So I'd really like it if you'd share just a little bit with the listeners as to when you come across this with your clients in respect of it's time to say goodbye to that part or that aspect of yourself that is no longer needed. How do you work through that with clients? I think that will help listeners if they're going through that and they're finding it hard to say goodbye, because in the West, I think we're really bad with grief and understanding that there's cycles. We think that we're in control of everything. So if you could just share a bit of that with the listeners, I think that would be really helpful.
Sure. That's a great summary of all of that as well. And so I use a process that was developed through a system called Internal Family Systems, IFS. And IFS is a parts theory type psychoanalysis where we've come to realize that parts of us develop over time. And often that part will have developed to keep us safe, to protect us, to help us survive in a period of trial. It might be trauma, it might be trial, it might just be a period of our life we needed to operate a certain way to receive connection and security. So all of these parts of us develop and we keep growing and life keeps moving, and those parts don't always continue to serve us in a way that is positive. And IFS operates under this belief that there are no bad parts. So I always say to people, it's not a bad part. There are no bad parts. But this part is operating from an old way. It doesn't serve you anymore. And that part doesn't know it doesn't serve you anymore. It remembers that one time that you felt super stressed and the way that you received comfort was through this. And so it keeps asking you to do that, but that doesn't work anymore. And so we name the parts, we find the parts. Where does the part live in your body? Sometimes it's as much as I use a lot of body oriented work and nervous system work. Okay, so if we tune into that feeling that you have, if we tune into that instinct that you have, where do you feel that in your body? And often it's, okay, I feel it in my stomach, or I feel it in my womb space, or I feel it in my throat. Okay, let's just tune into that. Let's just go towards that part and allow it to come forward. And some people are afraid of it. Some people are angry at it. Some people just are just like, I just want to let it go. And so my whole thing is we're going to go towards it with curiosity and compassion, gratitude for the fact that it exists because it feels that you need it. It exists because it loves you, that part of you. And so we go towards it with curiosity, compassion. We'll sit with it. Often it will have an image. Sometimes it will have a feeling. Sometimes it will have a color. And we bring that part up to speed. That part does not know where you have arrived in your life. That part does not know what you have accomplished. Often the part will be very surprised to find you at 40 years old when it believes that you're 7, right? So it's a lot of just bringing these parts up to speed with who you are and where you are. And then the part itself will realize, I'm no longer needed. I'm now ready to, and it will often even show you, I'm ready to be released into birds in the sky, or I'm ready to go into the ocean and go swim. And the part itself will almost often find release just in being recognized, cared for, loved, realized, and become aware that it's not necessary anymore. It's a really beautiful process. And sometimes then the client will have, oh my gosh, that part was there all this time and it was loving me and it cared for me during this period of my life. And we can have so much appreciation then for what we may have seen as really an annoying thing that we do. There's so much appreciation, there's so much love, and we can have just a bit of a grief release. Like that existed because it had to, and that's hard. Let's give it a proper moment in time. Let's give it a proper commemorization. Let's give it a proper send off. And
I love that.
there's often tears. There's often, a moment where we just need to sit in the heartbreak of it. And that's okay. And I do a lot of encouraging of that. In my program, we actually have a eulogy session. So a session where we eulogize and we write honoring things about the parts of us that we are now releasing. Because a eulogy is such a beautiful way to grieve, because it's a recognition of what was and a gratitude, even if that thing caused a lot of struggle for us. It's a gratitude and it's a recognition. And then it's a saying, I no longer need to walk in that way. And that's okay. Yeah.
I love that. I think the idea of having a eulogy be used in so many ways. You are shifting into a different era of your life where you're saying goodbye to parts of yourself in such a constructive way to support that grieving process. I absolutely love that idea.
Yeah, it's a really special way to do it. And I have other little practices that I will do depending on the people. And perhaps we're having one of these sessions right around the full moon. And I do a lot of full moon practices just personally and have ended up bringing people into that as well. And the full moon is such a beautiful time to recognize what's been going on for the last month for me. What's a theme I'm ready to release? Then we'll do some journaling, we'll do some writing, we'll write on a bay leaf. And always I do burning. So we're going to allow fire to receive that, consume that, send those ashes off into the moon and allow the moon to clear that for us. And that's maybe a little bit more, what would they call it? Like witchy or woo, and not everybody resonates with that. But it is it's a physical and symbolic thing to do. And we really need to bring the abstract conceptualization of things into the physical a lot of the time for people to feel, to see, to smell, to touch this thing that they are releasing. It's not just, you don't just think things away. You really don't.
No, and I think that's really important. I am a huge fan of burning things to clear them out, because I just think there is we have such a connection to fire. And from a spiritual perspective, of course, there's so much and information and esoteric teachings about the inner fire and inner purification. And I think just having that visual representation, the inner fire and that purification that's taking place within me is also represented by this. And it does make it so much more powerful. It may sound a little bit woo-woo to listeners, but we love a bit of woo here.
We do.
But actually, it's just such a kind of nice way to do that final piece. Now, I do also want to touch on something else that you said, because you brought up the nervous system, and as talking about the nervous system and being in the body and grounded and all of that is one of my favorite things to talk about. And I want to talk about at this moment in time, okay, we are in a mass awakening period, okay?
Yes, we are.
And whilst we are in a mass awakening period, there is this collective destabilization of the collective nervous system. Anyone who is tuned into the energies of the collective knows that the nervous system of the collective, that foundation of civilization of humanity, is really being tested, right? It's really being disturbed, okay? And I just want you to maybe share your perspective on kind of that collective, what you're picking up on with people, but also just some ways that for people who are feeling that and those who are sensitive to the energies of the collective, which I know lots of the listeners are, just maybe offer some practical ways how we can all look after ourselves through this process, because it's all well and good that we talk about important to be centered in ourselves and grounded and regulated in ourselves. But I'm just thinking about how are people supposed to do that whilst also being active in the world, compassionate in the world, operating in the world. Maybe they can't take themselves off to 2-week retreat where they can really get on top of this. What would be your advice to them if they're really feeling this, and how they can best navigate through from your perspective?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I do work with the nervous system. I use a polyvagal approach to the nervous system. So I work a lot with the vagus nerve with people, and I do a lot of education about people's vagus nerve. And like you said, it's all well and good to be managing your personal nervous system, but when the collective nervous system is so rattled, how do we not get pulled away by that? And truly it is to have practices that you are putting into place so regularly and then some in your own self. And I do a lot with myself and with others. Part of the mindful self compassion process that I work with is we're meeting ourselves in the present moment on purpose without judgment. And we're recognizing the common humanity of what it is we are experiencing. So, what we're doing is we're fighting off isolation. I'm not alone in my struggle by realizing that we're a part of the collective of struggle. And then the work that you do for yourself, with yourself, is for the good of the collective as well. So we're tuning in and back, out to the collective and into ourself, out to the collective and into ourself. And in that way, when we're working with ourselves, what we're actually offering is the collective grounding. What we're actually offering is a grounding in our nervous system that then we extend to the collective. We are not here alone. We're not doing this alone. We are all connected like the mycelium in the ground. And so when I imagine my nervous system, my vagus nerve spreading through my face, my ears, my neck, my throat, my chest, my belly, I imagine that it continues down into the ground and it continues out to others. And instead of, oh, the collective is so upset right now, and therefore I'm getting swept away by this wave, I do the opposite. The collective is so upset right now and I feel it. Let me pull some of that in and see if I can ground it. Let me see if just while I massage my own ears, while I pinch my own ears and I touch the little tiny nerve endings of my vagus nerve, can I offer that to the collective? Can I offer that in a spiritual way to the collective? Can I use a vagus reset? I have a great teaching episode on my YouTube channel where I teach about resetting the vagus nerve. Can I do these little resets in the morning? Can I ground into the earth? Just whether I'm on the earth or not, you can symbolically connect with the earth, right? Because some of us are in the snow right now. We don't want to be sitting on the ground, but we can move into the energy of the earth. We can ask for whatever element that works best with us. Mine is usually water, to flow through our system and move any stagnant energy out of us, move any energy that isn't ours out of us. We can set our own personal bubble of protection and then work on our vagus nerve. And in that wholeness, then I offer this to the collective. I recognize that I am part of a system. I am consciousness of my own, and I am collective consciousness. And what I ground for me, I ground for others. What I heal for me, I heal for others. I work with so many women. And when we go through what it is they're struggling with, I say, and what's the common humanity of that struggle? What's the common humanity of the struggle of the feminine? What's the divine connection? And it's always, I hold this for myself. And also this represents the collective wound to the feminine. That's right. And so as you heal for you, you heal for others. And I do a lot of that.
I think that's such a beautiful offering, because I think sometimes, because of how we are in the West, we see ourselves as very individual. And I am always saying to people, if you could see the impact that you doing your work has on the collective, you wouldn't miss a day. You'd always be looking after yourself, because I think sometimes, especially with light workers, we don't tend to all be in one place. We tend to be located in very different places geographically.
Strategically placed.
Exactly. And we can look out and go, okay, I'm seeing what's happening and experiencing the collective in my community before we get into collective humanity. And I don't feel like it's making a difference, or I don't feel like it's achieving anything. And I always say, I wish I could show you when you can look out at the grid of the world and the grid of humanity, how much doing that work for yourself does matter and it does help. And I know it can be overwhelming at times. There can be so much going on in personal lives and with the collective, but understanding that the work you do does have an impact because we do have that interbeing. We aren't
Absolutely.
alone.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think because we're in such an information age, we have so much access to everything that's going on all the time. It can become so very overwhelming. And I think a lot of people, maybe one of the first things they do is they wake up in the morning and they turn on their phone and they go onto the Instagram or they go onto their TikTok or they go onto their news websites. The first thing they're doing in the morning is taking in this onslaught of information of the wildness of what's going on in the world. And I would offer to people, at the very least, ground before you do that. Put up some protection and some grounding before you do that, or limit how much you do that if that's possible for you. Because it's not to say don't know what's going on in the world. That doesn't help anyone. Maybe find a balanced approach to however much time I'm going to spend grounding and calming my nervous system and pouring into myself and therefore the collective in that way. Then that's how much time I'm going to spend taking in this overwhelming propaganda and information from the whole world. Could you balance it? Do you spend 6 hours a day taking in information and 30 minutes balancing yourself? Maybe bring that into a more balanced place, because you're never not going to know what's going on in the world. And even if you don't know, because you haven't read it, you'll feel it. Can you offer a little bit more balance in your life so that you're taking in what you're passionate about, caring for, just enough to then pour that care and that energy instead of fear or anger? Can you pour it through you as love and care and, hurt, but a productive hurt for the world in the way that you then meditate and radiate out?
I love that. One of the tips that I had, and I took it from Cal Newport's podcast. I found him through his book, Digital Minimalism, because I'm sure, as you know, when we work online, we have to be very strict with ourselves in respect of how much time we're spending online. When you're creating content, when you're making things, you can very easily get sucked into it all. So I listened to the Digital Minimalism audiobook by Cal Newport, which I recommend to everybody who
Fabulous.
is having any problems with technology and overconsumption. On his podcast, one of the tips he gave, which I still do to this day now, is if you're somebody who wants to know what's happening in the world, and all of us are, we want to know what's happening with humanity, the collective, etc. But you don't need to know breaking news every 3 minutes where there is breaking news. Then get a Sunday newspaper, right? And you'll have an overview of everything that's happened in the week, and you'll know what's going on across the world, and obviously find a newspaper that you like, but you don't have to then feel like you don't know what's happening. You might know energetically, but not know what the stories that are being told are. I find that really useful because I spend my week working with people. I don't want to get sucked into the quote unquote breaking news every 3 seconds that we're being told that there is. But I find that a really good way of having that balance. On a Sunday, I can take the time to read some articles, see what's happening in the world, know what's going on, but it's not that massively overwhelming, distracting nervous system dysregulation that it is when you're constantly consuming content about it.
Yeah, that's excellent advice. That is really excellent advice. I've oscillated between, okay, I need to know, so these are the sites I follow, to I can't handle knowing anything. It's just too overwhelming. I don't want to know it all. I have a filter now. It's my husband. And he'll say to me, there's something going on in the world that feels pertinent that you should know. And I'll say, I'm not ready. And he'll say, okay, let me know when you are, because I haven't done my work in the morning yet, or I've had a really overwhelming day with clients. And I'll just say, I'm not ready, but tell me when I am. And he flags what it is that I should probably know. And he'll bring it in a kind of a grounded approach. Another way that I'll do it is I'll look at things just one step removed. I'll emotionally remove myself to look at things. And what I'll look for is patterns. I'll look for the patterns and I'll look for the themes. And then I'll go,
Mhm.
okay, that's the theme and that's the pattern and that's the theme and that's the pattern. And I'll bring those then with me to my, what do I need to do for the collective on these patterns and
Mhm.
themes? And typically I see them every day in my clients' lives. So typically I'll have the same theme show up 6 or 7 times in a week with clients that I've noted is happening in this news world. My clients always keep me up to date too, because they'll show up dysregulated about something and they'll let me know what's going on. And then the next client almost inevitably will show up dysregulated about the same thing, but from the opposite angle. And so for me, then it's a practice of staying very neutral and staying
Yeah.
removed from the emotional event of it. And how can I, from a neutral place, hold a sacred container for this person showing up with me who needs to work it out from their place in the world, their worldview, their mindset. And how can I help them do that? And also then help them take a step back and see things from an energetic perspective, see things from a what's going on in the collective theme here. And that's often what I try and do to help people manage it psychologically and then also realize how is this affecting my nervous system and how is this affecting the world and how can I grow from just me experiencing this to me and the world working together to heal this.
I love
Yeah.
that. I love that. And I think that's so important as well, because again, I think there's been an act of isolationism among
Absolutely.
against individuals, and people are living in their own little bubbles a lot
Mhm.
more than
Mhm.
pre-2020. People tend to have their own kind of little bubble that they live in. And I think it does take that ability to go, okay, I'm only being fed information that the algorithm has determined that I need to see.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not getting the full picture because you won't. And also, I am part of humanity.
Yeah.
I'm not just this island. I'm not alone, any level, in any dimension. And also, I need to navigate this in a way that is good for me, my family, my community, and the collective, and start to
Right.
see themselves as an individual, because what we're here doing in this time period is that individuation, really
Absolutely.
stepping into sovereignty, stepping into our power of being an individual. And I am also part of that collective, you
Yeah.
know? So
Yeah.
I think looking at it from a themes and patterns perspective is a really interesting way to do it, because then you start to see this kind of symbiosis of what it is that you're experiencing and how that's playing out in other people. And also, I think that offers the opportunity for a lot more compassion for other people,
Yes.
because you can see how it's playing out in them, and it may not present the same way that it does. So, for example, just with the nervous system, of course, with some people and the nervous system gets very dysregulated, they're going to shut down, they're going to not want to speak, they're going to go into that freeze mode, whereas other people are going to go into that fight mode. And
Absolutely.
when you understand what's happening, you can go, oh, okay, that's how it's presenting in that person. How can I have more compassion for them,
Right.
how they're showing up and what they're showing up as? A lot more
Right.
kindness is needed in the world, for sure.
So much more kindness is needed in the world. Yeah. And when you learn your own nervous system, I have a process that helps people actually map their nervous system. We don't even realize that we have a cyclical or patterned approach. We don't even often realize, like, hey, when I'm feeling really dysregulated and I'm starting to shut down, these are the thoughts that almost
Mhm.
always come, or these are the behaviors that almost always happen. So I help people walk through all their different modes, the fight mode, the flight mode, the playing dead mode, all these different modes through experiences, and we map it. This is what it looks like. This is what helps me. This is what supports me while I'm here, because sometimes we need to be there. And then this is what helps me get out of it. And they learn how to then realize, okay, my nervous system is telling me this. Is it appropriate? Maybe right now I am in a really scary situation and my nervous system is telling me a very appropriate thing. So, how do I support myself while I need to be here? And then how do I signal to my nervous system, it's over now. The threat has moved on, and now we need to move back into this ventral vagal rest and restore safety modes.
Mm.
So I work that process with people, because when you learn how to befriend your nervous system, listen to the voice of your body, listen to the voice of your body, and come into connection. Teach your body how to trust you too. Because sometimes your body's responding to a remembered event. This smell reminds me of that time that was really scary, and that smell was there. So your body goes into dysregulation, even though there's no actual danger. So can you recognize your body has done that thing, assess the situation, realize it doesn't need to be there, and resource your body back into rest and restore? And then once you've learned how to do that, you can have recognition and compassion for other people and their nervous systems too. You really can.
Absolutely. I think that's part that doesn't get talked about enough in kind of the whole conversation around nervous systems, is the closing of the stress cycle and how to do that, and how to really finish that cycle for yourself and move back into a place of regulation. And I think that's partly because people are so bombarded with information and noise. It feels like there isn't the opportunity to close the stress cycles. There isn't active participation that we have to take when we notice, okay, I'm becoming dysregulated, go through that process and close the stress cycle before we go back into whatever situation it is that we're in. So I think that's a really important thing for people to know.
Yeah, it is. And I do that as a psychologist. One thing that I love about the work that I do is I'm grounded in my psychology education. I'm grounded in this like world view of she's got her education and she's done all of the things that we value here in the materialism world. And then I have this spiritual perspective and this energy perspective from the Akashic Records and other forms of intuitive work that I use. And I bring the two together. So as a psychologist, a grounded earth side psychologist, I've learned the nervous system and I teach the nervous system, but there's such a spiritual component to this. And your energy bodies are more than just what you can see and touch, right?
Yes.
And so we have almost like a spiritual nervous system that needs
Very
tending
much so.
as well. And so what is our spiritual nervous system, and what lies in our energetic bodies that are perhaps affecting our physical bodies? What lies in trauma from past lives that maybe we're hanging on to because our soul wanted to do something with it in this life? And how can we bring those two things together? So I love that I bring this grounded psychology and somatic nervous system body work together with what's our spiritual nervous system saying.
I love
And
that.
is it intuitive? Is it Akashic? It depends. I believe my guides are always working with me. And what I often do is tune into the other person's energy bodies and the other person's guides, and then with their permission, open their records, which is it just blows practice wide open when we can actually come into all of that together.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Because I know on my own personal journey, obviously I burned out phenomenally 3 times and hospitalized. And one of the deepest work that I ever did with the Akashic Records was understanding, as I was going through the healing journey and the regulation journey, was understanding that bigger picture perspective. And once I could understand it and go, oh, that makes total sense then, and I could allow it. And then it is that plants work again. It's that, okay, that's past life me. And I understand why you were like that, but I don't have to be that way in this lifetime. So I think just having that bigger picture perspective that the Akashic Records offers can just let us see things from such a deeper perspective. And by working with the light grid, you're tuning into that spiritual nervous system that is so important if you want to work with your intuition and trust your intuition and develop your psychic abilities and do all of that amazing stuff that is available to everybody. You've got to get that foundational piece right. And that is where the nervous system comes in.
Yeah.
I want to touch on one more thing before I let you go, because I'm aware that I'm talking to you for a very long time, but
I love it. We can talk all day, Suzie.
It's just such a great conversation. I want to talk to you about archetypes, okay?
Sure.
Because I know you are going to have both perspectives from the Jungian kind of archetypal work and also archetypes from Akashic Records perspective, because obviously we work a lot with archetypal energies at the soul blueprint level. And how they present in people. And if you would share how important archetypal work is in your work, in your own personal practice, and how maybe people can start exploring archetypal work a bit more for themselves.
Great question. I'm going to really have to dig deep for this one. I have found, again, that the archetypal work can feel a little bit abstract for people. I have noticed for me that, again, this is even the tagline for my new company, is being psychologically grounded and then spiritually guided. So can we be psychologically grounded in what's the first archetype we can maybe reach towards? What's the first? How can we start small and then work our way out? When I'm working with parts with people, it's okay. Sometimes I hear a voice in my head that sounds really quite cruel. And we say, okay, that's the inner critic. And then the critic, we can begin to understand the archetypes in which the critic will sit, or the inner ally. And what's the inner ally? And so how can you strengthen the voice inside of you that speaks for you? How would you speak to a friend? And so then we can slowly but surely, okay, now what archetypes can land there? And then we make our way out this individual experience of the archetypal energy and the collective archetypal energy. And then we move out to the spiritual energy. The archetype that I find myself most with is the divine feminine. And the divine feminine takes on these different roles. So we have the maiden, we have the mother, we have the crone. You and I were talking so much about the crone and the crone energy, and then it's all broken down. And where are people feeling most influenced? What energy is it that you're feeling? Can we discover an archetypal energy that falls into, I guess? And here's Carl Jung. Here's the archetypes talked about by Carl Jung. Let's look at those. Okay. And then people will go, that's a thing. Because I think a lot of people just have no idea. That's a thing. That's an energy. That's a graspable concept rather than just dots running around all the time.
I love the divine feminine archetype because the goddess is the goddess with 1,000 faces. And I think when you can explore different aspects of it and honor different aspects within yourself, and this is regardless of gender, because everybody has access to that archetype, it just expands you so much more. Because I remember when I first ever started looking at the divine feminine energy, because I was very disconnected from it during my burnout phase. It was like, no, I don't even know that exists. And I remember doing some work and it was, okay, I understand Maiden, Mother, Crone. I understand that's a cycle that we repeat over and over again. But I had no idea of all the other different flavors of the divine feminine. When you start to work in conjunction with those different archetypal energies and you start to see them in yourself, you realize how much power there is in them and how much complexity there is in them. And it can be a bit overwhelming for people because it can be like, oh my God, I feel like I've got bits of everything. And you do have bits of everything. You do have bits of everything in you, but there are going to be certain influences that are stronger at different times. And as you go through your spiritual awakening journey, which is something that Carlie is helping you with in that 12-week program, different archetypal energies are going to come in at different times. And by us being able to identify those and understand them and know how best to work with them and support that archetype within ourselves, I think it's so important. And something I think that has been lost a lot in our conversations, because the true stories are all archetypal journeys. They're all different figures coming in. And I think as humanity, we've lost the joy and the beauty of understanding those archetypal energies, and not as figures that are just out there, but how they are in here and how they show up in here.
Yeah. Where does the priestess show up in you? Where does the queen show up in you? What has been shadowed? I work so much with shadow. What has been shadowed? What were you told was not appropriate in your childhood, in your place of worship, in your whatever? What were you told that was not appropriate? Was it not appropriate for you to hear and feel the energies of other living beings? So did you put it away. If you put it away, did it end up in your shadow? Of course it ended up in your shadow. And that doesn't mean that it's bad. We got to go find it. We've got to go rescue it. Your shadow is not a scary place. Your shadow is the archetype that holds all of the parts of you that got hidden away because they were told they weren't allowed. And that is actually, I almost want to call it like, it's like a safety deposit box. Let's work with the archetype of the shadow. Let's get past the scariness of it and trust that the priestess lives in there. The Crone lives in there. All these different archetypes that maybe perhaps you don't have access to because for whatever reason you were told if you talk too much, you're annoying. So you stop talking and you tuck it away. But actually you have so much wisdom to give. If you believe that you have abilities that our materialism world says that they don't exist, you tuck them away. So all of your spiritual gifts are living down there in your shadow. Let's go rescue them because now you get to live in your own truth and your own self and your own process. You get to be in your divinity. Let's go find them. Let's go find your gifts and pull them out of the shadow. I love the shadow. I think the shadow is, like I said, it's like our safety deposit box, or it's like a deep down, almost like dungeon treasure trove. If we can bravely go down there and find what got cast there. So the archetype of the shadow for me is a big one.
I love that. So I am going to let you go now, my love, but it has been so good to have you here. And no doubt we'll do this again, hopefully not in 2 years' time. Maybe we'll do another one next year. But for anyone who's listening, obviously I'm going to put all of your details into the show notes. But for anyone who's listening and they think I need to work with this person, or I want to hear more about what Carlie does, where can people find you? Where are you active most at the moment on socials? And how is it best for people to reach out if they want to book in a session or an appointment or join your program?
Thanks for asking. That's so great. I have a YouTube channel called Realigned and Unfiltered with a friend of mine who does neurolinguistics and alchemy. So we talk about everything awakening from the neuroscience perspective to the nervous system perspective to the soul journey perspective. So Realigned and Unfiltered is on YouTube, Spotify, TikTok, and Instagram. And that's where you can come listen to me for free. There's lots there, and come and enjoy and come and engage. And then my own personal work can be found at awakeningdoula.com. I am stepping into the role of doula, helping people with their rebirth process. And I would love to be able to support more of your listeners and your students. I actually do have quite a few of your students who have found me over time, or I've sent my clients to you. So that's awakeningdoula.com. And I have Awakening Doula Instagram as well. And that's where you can find working with me one-on-one for just individual therapy sessions, for Akashic Records reading, for a combo, or for this new 12-week program that I'm rolling out. And I do enrollments at the beginning of each month for the 12-week program. You'll just have to let me know that you want to be a part of it. And I'd love to meet each and every one of the people interested in working with me.
I love that. Thank you so much for your time today. And as I said, I think we could probably talk hours, but we'll stop it there for today. If you're listening to this episode and we've touched on different topics that you would like us to explore in future episodes in more detail, then just drop it in the comments wherever you're listening, because I'm sure I can convince Carlie to come back and we can have more of a conversation. Maybe you want a deep dive into shadow work or a deep dive into archetypal work or anything that we've talked about today. I'm sure she would come back and help us explore more. So thank you so much for your time. I can't wait to go and find you on YouTube, because until today, I didn't know you had a YouTube channel, and I'm a big fan of YouTube. So I can't wait to find you over there and see more of your stuff, and keep doing the amazing work that you do in this world, because I know you. Obviously, I've been in your Akashic Records. I know lots about you, and I know that you have such a good heart and such a big heart, and you hold such amazing space for people. So do keep doing you and keep bringing your work into this world.
Thank you so much, Suzie. That's really meaningful.